Crude oil is formed from the remains of animals and plants, ancient biomass that has been stored in the earth for millions of years. They call it fossil fuel. In Texas, we call it black gold, Texas tea. When you refine crude oil for use, there are 3 basic steps. The first step is separation. It is distilled, sorted out, so to speak, into fractions, and each fraction has its own purpose. The first step is the most time-consuming step in the entire process because sorting things out just takes time. To understand something so complex, to do it right, to sort it out, we need scientists. People who follow a structured approach to acquire knowledge. Their means that are methodic and systematic requires accuracy to find evidence to give us answers to our questions. In the past few episodes, I went over the case of the Houston mass murders, and what I went over was the story of what happened, the bare bones. But there is a lot more to the story than just the bare bones. There were and are many complications that exist even to this day. One of those complications has to do with identifying all the victims, the boys whose bodies were unearthed from High Island Beach, the woods of San Rayburn, and especially from the boat shed on Silver Bell Drive. While it took only days to unearth their remains, it has taken scientists years, decades even, to sort them all out and properly identify them. It's been a far from perfect process, and it is a process that is still evolving and underway to this very day. The scientists are who I want to talk about in the next few episodes. On this one, I want to focus on the medical examiners and forensic anthropologists, their trials, tribulations, and triumphs, their attempts to find peace and closure for the families of the victims. I'm very excited to do this episode. I find these people to be the true heroes in this daunting and never-ending quest, and in their discoveries, they're doing things that none of the rest of us could. So I'm ready to talk about them, and as always, we have a lot to go over. Let's get started. My name is Jen Schaefer, and this is Crude Acts, the Texas True Crime Podcast, the Houston Mass Murders. This is Episode 5, The Scientist. After waiting a couple months, I finally got my hands on a copy of Lise Olsen's newest book, The Scientist and the Serial Killer. Man, I have to tell you, it was well worth the wait. Her book is my 7th book to read on Dean Corll and the Houston Mass Murders, and it didn't disappoint. It's well researched, it's well written, and it drops some major bombshells about mysteries that have yet to be uncovered until now. What I find interesting is my favorite books written on this topic are all written by women. You've got Lise Olsen's book. You also have Barbara Gibson's book, The Houston Mass Murders, 1973. And you have Catherine Ramsland and Tracy Ullman's book, The Serial Killer's Apprentice. All of them bring up interesting aspects of this case that are worth a deeper examination and worth discussing. This case is complex any way that you look at it, and you guys know that I like to look at complicated cases through a prism, look at them from every angle. All sides of this case have heartbreak. All sides have conflict, internal and external. Who did it? Who it was done to? What occurred? When and where it happened? Why it happened? And how it happened? All of it. All of it is complicated. So, like I said in my intro, the last 4 episodes in this series were just the bare bones. I recently heard it called kind of a Wikipedia version of the case. It's something that you can look up and read and go over. But this case goes a lot deeper. And this case is far from sorted out. We still have bones of boys who have yet to be identified. And the worst part, we're not sure we have recovered or even know about all of the victims. There may be more boys buried in the boat shed, out on the beach, out by the lake, and maybe even beyond that. The killings could have occurred beyond just those 3 short years. When serial killer Dean Corll was shot and killed by 17-year-old Wayne Henley, the answers as to why Dean did what he did died with him. He was never really investigated, never arrested. He never went to trial, never had the chance to tell his side of the story, not that we would have believed him. And most importantly, he never had to face the music. That leaves us, even to this day, with a void of information and a serious lack of closure, a story that is incomplete. The only people left to tell the tale of what happened those 3 violent years was his 2 accomplices, 2 messed up boys who fell into the hands of a sadistic killer who were abused in ways that we can't imagine, but then did to others, to some of their friends, things we can't imagine. Dean's boys, Wayne Henley, David Brooks, his apprentices, so to speak, and their psychological makeup, I'm going to leave for another episode. It's another discussion and another type of science. For now, I want to start with the first step, the foundation, the remains of the victims, the bones. Bones tell their own kind of story, but they need an interpreter, a scientist, a medical examiner, or a forensic anthropologist to tell the story, to pass on what happened to them from the victims themselves as if from the beyond. And there is no person who has done it better on this case than Dr. Sharon Derrick, the scientist in Lise Olsen's book, The Scientist and the Serial Killer. My friend Adam Brewer and I had a chance to speak with Dr. Derrick recently, and we both left the conversation fascinated by this woman, what she has accomplished, and what she has committed to continue accomplishing is just mind-blowing. In her book, Lise Olsen talks about her past, her education, and her personal trials and triumphs, and some of her many cases throughout her career, which has been pretty cool. But I want to focus on her involvement in identifying the victims of the Houston mass murders. Her career started at the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences in 2006. The bones were dug up in 1973, so this is 2006. And she joins the team, and one of her first assignments was to take inventory of cold cases and collect samples for DNA testing. These types of remains are kept in a long-term storage chamber, a cold and damp room filled with bags and boxes of bones, bones without names or a final resting place, bones stuck in limbo. It was there in that cold, damp room that Dr. Derrick found a box labeled Houston Mass Murders, 1973, and in big letters, "Do not touch." Well, good thing for us, Dr. Derrick has a rebellious spirit. With her curiosity getting the better of her, she decided to ignore the warning and break the rules, and she took down the box that said "do not touch," and she peeked inside. And when she did, she realized, as if almost by chance, she had stumbled upon the remains of the lost boys. This one in particular, a victim of the serial killer known as the Candyman, Dean Corll. She remembered this case. It was a long time ago. This boy in the box had been waiting for a very long time for her to find him. His bones arrived there in 1973 with Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Joseph Yahimchik. I think I'm saying it right. His last name's a little difficult, so everyone just simply called him Dr. Joe. But Dr. Joe, in 1960, he became the county's first chief medical examiner. And this guy, he performed tens of thousands of autopsies and worked high-profile cases. And one of those cases was the Houston mass murders in 1973. So from the beginning, sorting out the bodies from the pile of bones and remains was a huge task. There were so many of them coming in all at once, families as well piling in by the dozens, demanding answers after hearing the news that their missing boy may have been found in the worst kind of way. Dr. Joe and his team tried their hardest to get it right. But back then, they didn't have the resources or the technology we have now. All they had to help identify him was the basics, their clothing items, locks of their hair, dental records, medical records. It did help, of course, and it got some of them right. But sadly, of course, it got some of them wrong. Some of the bodies were mislabeled and ended up being turned over to the wrong family. Some were even buried in the wrong place. Some of them ended up in a box in a storage facility where they remained for 50 years. But they did the best they could, and then here we are now. Fast forward to 2007, when the torch was finally passed to newcomer Dr. Sharon Derrick. By this time, they had new technology, and Sharon knew how to use this technology, and she had an eagerness to put her skills to the test. So she asked for permission from her supervisor, which she was granted, and then from there, she embarked on solving the mystery of the bones in that box, as well as others she found that were like it. In Lise Olsen's book, which, again, I highly suggest you read, she goes over all of them in detail. I'm going to summarize a couple of them for you, just for time's sake. If you want to dig in deep and learn more, like I said, get the book. So we'll start from the very beginning in that first box that I was telling you about. The first box that said do not touch. This box was labeled ML 733349. The contents inside the box were articles of clothing, a belt, tattered jeans, a pair of work boots, a jacket, and an orange comb in the back pocket. And of course, most importantly, there were the bones of the victim. She read during the autopsy report that they found a bullet lodged in his sinus cavity and a nylon rope around his neck. His body was found in the boat shed off Silver Bell Road. What this victim needed was a name. Dr. Derrick used all the resources she had at her disposal. She noted her observations and measurements. She gathered all of her samples. She did all the science-y stuff that she learned from her years of study, stuff that we have no idea about. She entered all the things in all the databases. She had artists create drawings and renderings of who this boy looked like from the bones, and she had a 3D model made. When she got it all together and finally got all the information in the databases and sorted out, she pieced together that info with what she knew about the cases. And from there, she came up with a theory as who this boy was. She thought the boy in the box labeled "Do Not Touch" in the cold, damp room was victim 15-year-old Randall Lee Harvey, a Heights kid who left his home on his bike to head to work at a local gas station and was never seen again. But how can she prove it for sure? Dr. Derrick thought her best move to expedite solving this mystery was to think outside the box. She decided that it was time to meet with someone who knows more about the case than anyone else, someone who might know more about Randy and what happened to him. She decided it was time to meet face to face with a killer. Dr. Derrick wasn't thrilled about sitting down with David Brooks, but she hoped he could, or hopefully would, give some sort of insight, but she just didn't expect very much from the meeting. When she did go and she met with him, as usual, David Brooks was quiet standoffish, and let's just say it, he was kind of a dick. It took a minute to break through his cold demeanor and reach him. Dr. Derrick showed him 3 reconstruction photos of 3 different unidentified victims that she'd put together. She had him focus hard on the reconstruction of the boy she thought was Randy. He studied it and said he didn't know who he was, but he did remember that he was shot in the head. The 2 others he couldn't recall at all. He reminded her that Coral worked alone and he worked with other kids other than him. He insisted, as he always did, he didn't kill anyone. It seemed their conversation wouldn't lead to much, and it wasn't until right before she left the meeting that he surprised her when he provided her a clue. Brooks sketched out a map where Randall Harvey and his family once lived. He said maybe it could help her find relatives that could then provide a DNA sample, and maybe that could help her. And that was his goodbye to her. From there, David Brooks headed back to his cold, damp cell, alone, you could say in a box labeled "Do Not Touch." Dr. Derrick headed back to her office. Back there, she took the map. She researched it, she found the address, looked up the information. Come to find out, Randy Harvey had lived there with his 2 sisters. She looked them up and contacted them and asked them to come to her office. They eagerly agreed. They had been waiting for this for a very long time. When she met them, she noticed straight away that one of the sisters resembled the facial reconstruction that they did of the boy, even though by that time they were in their 50s. The sisters right away recognized the jacket and the boots they found with the body and a lock of his hair, and then most importantly, that orange comb that they found in his pocket. They said he always had that comb with him, and it was orange. From there, Dr. Derrick swabbed their cheeks for DNA, and she sent it off, and she waited. And luckily, it didn't take long to get the answers back. Just like Dr. Derrick suspected, there was a DNA match. Both the family and the scientist finally had their answers, and the boy in the box who had waited so long in the cold, damp room alone now had a name and a final resting place. Randall Harvey finally made it home. But that box was just one of many. And there was another boy in another box that also needed a name. And to take on that task, another scientist joined the team. Dr. Jennifer Love came from University of Tennessee, where she studied forensic anthropology. This school was and is known as one of the best programs of its type in the United States, mainly because they were the first to have a study program that had a body farm. And I have to tell you about body farms because they're really gross, but they're really neat. And I read about these years ago, so it was really cool to know one of the scientists that came from them. So I'm sure that you're well aware that you can sign up to donate your organs when you die. But did you know that you can also choose to donate your body to a body farm? These body farms are outdoor field laboratories at major universities where forensic science students can study dead bodies. They learn how to identify them. They learn how to identify causes of death and even the factors involved in the aftermath of death. They learn how to scientifically document all the postmortem changes that they study. The research that is learned at these body farms is instrumental in the advancement of forensic science. There are 7 of them in different universities across the United States. The University of Tennessee, which I told you about, there's one at Western Carolina University, Southern Illinois University, Colorado Mesa University, University of South Florida, and there are 2 of them in the state of Texas. There's one at Texas State University, and there's one at Sam Houston State University. Having multiple body farms at different schools in different parts of the U.S. allows students to study how different climates and altitudes change the way that bodies decompose. So that's a little bit about the body farms. But back to Dr. Love. Dr. Love comes in to join Harris County and to join Sharon Derrick in their quest to identify the lost boys. So she comes in armed with her experience working on the body farms, and she, digging around in the same cold, damp room, comes across a box labeled ML 836849. And on this box, it was labeled Antiquities and do not try to identify. Luckily, just like Dr. Derrick, Dr. Love did it anyway. It reminds me of the quote, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." So I love that these two rebellious doctors went on a quest to do something with the word saying, "Do not do it." So Dr. Love takes the box. She opens it, expecting to find some ancient artifacts because at the time, all she knew about it was that label and antiquities. So she looks in it, expecting to find something archaeological, and what she found instead were remains of a teenage boy. Bones that were actually in good condition, older, indeed, but not antiquated. And then she read the case of this boy. He was found by a fisherman and his dog on a High Island beach in 1983, a decade after the other Houston mass murder boys were found. They brought him in, not knowing who he was, of course, but they noted that he could have been one of the Candyman victims because of the same signature. The boy was nude, and he was wrapped in similar plastic sheeting as Coral's other victims. Dr. Love studied the bones and did all the things that I told you about that Dr. Derrick did, and then she shipped them off to the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification. And from there, she waited for their response. A short time before Dr. Love did this, and unbeknownst to her entirely, Dr. Sharon Derrick received emails from sisters of a missing boy. They hoped that Dr. Derrick could do for their family what she did for Randall Harvey's family, to find out if their missing brother was also one of Dean Coral's many victims. The sister said her brother disappeared from the Spring Branch area in 1973, at a time when Dean Coral and David Brooks lived in the area. After he disappeared in 73, she and her sister never heard from him ever again. So Dr. Derrick invited the sisters to the lab so she could collect their DNA to have on file. They agreed. And so they come in. Dr. Derrick takes their DNA and sends it off to the same lab that Dr. Love sent off the bones. Because of that, the wait for the answers wasn't long. In November 2009, Dr. Love received her report back from UNT, and to her surprise, the bones made a match with two sisters who submitted their DNA through her co-worker, Dr. Derrick. The scientists both had been working on the same case without realizing, and then that came together and they had an answer from both of their work. After she got the news, she rushed down to Sharon's office and she shared with her her findings, and then they called the sisters. They called the sisters of a boy named Joseph Allen Lyles to tell them that they found their brother. They talked about their brother with a scientist, how he was a gifted artist and a kind soul, and on the day he disappeared, they think that he ran into a boy named David Brooks at a roller rink, and from there he joined him at a party at an apartment of a man named Dean Coral, and from there was never seen again. That boy now has a name and now has a home, and he was stuck there until a scientist found him stuffed away in a box labeled Antiquities. Finally, the two sisters had the closure that they needed. This was a long, agonizing 36 years. And it goes to show what two scientists can do when they work together. With 2 mysteries solved, Dr. Derrick carried on her work. During her tenure at the Harris County Institute of Forensic Science between 2006 and 2018, she identified the remains of several lost boys and even corrected mistakes in identification made prior. Boys like Roy Bunton, Stephen Sickman, Michael Balch, and of course, Alan Lyles and Randy Harvey. All boys forgotten and misplaced, all that found their way home thanks to the scientist. But there was one case that wasn't solved, and it plagued the good doctors for many years. It plagued Dr. Sharon Derrick even after she retired. And that boy in that box was simply known as, quote, swimsuit boy. This box number was ML733356. For those of you who know about this case, you know about the daunting task that it has been trying to find this boy's identity. What we know about him is that he died in 1972. He was between the ages of 15 and 18 years old. His height was between 5'2" and 5'7", and he had brown hair. The biggest thing that we're trying to check out and the biggest evidence that we could go on were his clothing items that he wore the day that he went missing. It was a khaki-colored long-sleeve t-shirt that had a large blue and white P symbol on it, and the letters USMC and L84MF, which means late for my funeral. I think that's like a military thing. This boy also had on dark blue corduroys. He had brown leather cowboy boots, and finally, Catalina swim trunks with vertical stripes and a silver belt with the letter C on the buckle. The swim trunks, of course, are what gave the boy his temporary name of, quote, swimsuit boy. Throughout the years, for a long time now, investigators have been trying to figure out who this boy is. They've received tips and even names. One of the names was Bobby French. They had what they believe a picture of him shirtless, but they were unable to confirm that. There was another boy. His name was Darren Hillis. He was a boy from Virginia who went missing March 1973. There was another unnamed boy that Dean and Wayne picked up in early 72. This boy could have been any of them. I've read this case for a long time, and I've read about it for a long time, and I've been on threads about it for a long time, but I've had my own thoughts about him. And what I think is, of course, the most interesting clue was the mix-matched attire. Being from Houston, heavy corduroy pants, cowboy boots, a long-sleeve shirt, and then a swimsuit. I don't know. It just doesn't add up. From what we can assume about that is he disappeared during cooler months. It's way too hot to wear most of those things in Houston, except for a few months when it's cooler. But then what's up with the swimsuit? Why does he have a swimsuit and all those heavy clothing? It just didn't make sense. For me, though, that does lend to a theory that we'll discuss in future episodes. The theory that Dean Corll was connected to a group of men who produced child pornography, a group that had tentacles that reached out nationwide and even worldwide. And we'll go over all that mess later. We're going to leave it for right now. But it does seem that this boy, swimsuit boy, if you will, was lured in for something lascivious. I mean, we know he was. We're talking Dean Corll, right? So, but there's more to it. We shall see. For years, the identity of Swimsuit Boy has been a mystery. People have been adamant about their thoughts as to who he was. Dr. Derrick, of course, was never fully convinced one way or another. Scientists are never fully convinced until the science gives them the correct answer. Well, guess what, y'all? I'm here to tell you that science has finally come through on the identification of this kid. And this is super recent, y'all. In Lise Olsen's book, The Scientist and the Serial Killer, she gives us the answer, the scientific answer, the actual answer as to who this boy was and the great mix-up that was the reason it was so hard to identify him. I was floored when I found out the answer. My mouth was agape as I read it. And when I found out, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. So that boy's name is, I'm going to do Lise Olsen a solid here, and I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to give you the answer. For that answer, you're going to have to go and get her book and read it for yourself. I don't want to spoil it for Lisa, and I don't want to spoil it for you. Okay, so trust me, you'll thank me later. I do have some more information to share with you, though. I want to talk about another type of science, which lends to more complications in this case, how it affected the case way back then in 1973, and how it affects it now. We're going to talk about the science of psychology on our next episode. Because for now, we are out of time. But thank you so much for listening to this episode, and thank you for your patience. I know it's been a minute since I put out an episode. I think my last one was around when we went to Albuquerque for Behind the Crime, which was a really great podcast festival. So thank you for your patience. I've been super busy with work and super busy celebrating a very special kiddo who just graduated from the University of Texas in Austin. We're super proud of you, Mackenzie. You're on your way, and you're going to make big changes in the world. She's going to be another scientist, by the way. So good job, Mackenzie. Thank you, Russell Dunlap, for all of your hard work and your sound editing and making this thing sound so cool. Thank you, Amy, for your support. Thank you, Two Star Symphony, for your badass music. And of course, thank you, listeners and those who support the show. Please like and subscribe and tell your friends, and I will see you next time.